Sweet! You clicked on a video that has no flames coming out of the presenter's head. Instead, you are going to hear 10 encouragements that will help you move theology from head to heart. You want that, don't you? You wonder, well, why does Christianity not feel holistic? Why am I not a 24/7 Christian? Why doesn't my faith animate my entire life? Well, it is not going to be a pill that causes that to happen. Like, oh, I got rid of my headache. I'm good to go. I'm no longer dualistic with my life here and my faith there. It doesn't work that way. Instead, we need to do stuff. We need to actually be actively engaged in shoving the information that God puts into our eyes, reading, through our ears, hearing. Todd, we know how our body parts work. Okay, when you learn about God, it goes into your noggin. Great. You need that. Christianity is cognitive. It is not just a mystical, stuff just happens to me and I feel like something. No, we learn stuff. But when our knowledge that we've gained, eyes or ears, just stays there and doesn't make its way to our hands or our feet or to our will or to our emotions, it just feels like it's incomplete, and it is. And that's why I hope you click this button. Dr. John Crotts, he's one of our Fortis fellows. He recently did a Fortis forum. You can watch this whole thing, and I encourage you to do so. I get it. This isn't zesty YouTube material. It doesn't have a lot of whiz-bangery, but what it does have is information that will help you become a 24/7 Christian. Dr. John Crotts would like to offer these 10 tips to you. Now, this is all edited, so you're just going to get kind of a taste of this. If you want the full treatment, head on over to Fortis Plus.
One of the things that they emphasize at my gym is we want to learn functional fitness. We don't just want to be bodybuilders and looking at ourselves in the mirror flexing. We want functional fitness. We want our muscles to be able to do the jobs that God still has for us in this stage of life. And that's the way it needs to be with our theology as well. Putting it into practice as opposed to just being theological muscle builders. One more verse that came to mind was just the simple one in John 14, verse 15, the words of Jesus, where he says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So loving Jesus is about action, obedience. It's not just filling our heads with truth and having happy feelings. It's putting the truth to work in our lives. What about Judas Iscariot? He was right there with Jesus. He was hearing the things on the front lines. He didn't have to read about it in the newspaper. He was right there. He got to watch Jesus perform many of his most spectacular miracles. And talk about seeing the truth lived out. He was walking with Jesus. So I think Judas would have done very well on a theology exam in terms of writing the correct, precise answers to the questions. And yet, did Judas understand anything of what Jesus was teaching? Because when the pressure came, he betrayed Jesus. And Jesus even said, it would have been better if you had never even been born. You are so far wide of the mark. So it is a sobering reminder of the importance of not just knowing it, but doing it. I remember talking to somebody who had sort of started checking out of church. And I think I surprised him because I said, you feel like you're, hurting yourself by missing out. But do you realize you're also hurting me and you're hurting all of us? Because you've got a role here at our church to give, not just your money, but give of yourself. Tell us the things God's doing in your life so that we can be encouraged and strengthened. And maybe the Lord has given you help and comfort in an area that someone else is going through right now. And they need to hear from you. And if you are absent, doing something else, deprioritizing the church family, that's not good for you, but that's also not good for us. People sometimes wonder, new Christians, what about my friends? Should I have unbelieving friends? And of course the answer is yes, because we're trying to reach them with the gospel. We always want to have that outward focus. However, I would follow that up with your best friends ought to be believers. You don't want, your believers to be kind of on the periphery, but I'm spending all my time with unbelievers. And I think in those situations where you're in that hostile work environment, it's just tough. You want to just really make sure that you are extra intentional about spending quality time with the right kind of people and quality time in the Word. I think, you're in the trenches and you can't afford to let your guard down. Conscientiously choose, say, all right, I'm not gonna play video games on Thursday night. On Thursdays, that's gonna be godly man night. Obviously, you're understanding what I'm saying. There are practical sacrifices you can make. I know that churches sometimes have the Bible study at, the guys' Bible study before work at the ridiculously early hour. And you just go, well, I love my sleep more than I love that Bible study. And yet, if the godly guys in your church are part of that Bible study, is it not worth the sacrifice? Is it not worth turning off that show the night before and getting to bed so that you get your good rest and you get to the Bible study to be with those men? We weren't made to make it on our own. The Christian life is not an individual sport. It's a team sport. And the church is our team. When the rubber meets the road, when the times are toughest, that's when your theology is going to show up and you're going to see what you're made of. And what I've called over the years the go to church verse is Hebrews 10:25. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Well, this is in the context of the local church gathering. There were no other gatherings. Sometimes people read this verse and say, well, it doesn't say church. Maybe he's just talking about hanging out with your Christian friends at the coffee shop. It's like, no. The only gatherings there were in New Testament times were the church gatherings. And so when the Hebrews were being tempted to neglect that, it was because persecution was ramping up in the Roman Empire at that time. And it was going to cost them something to be identified with God's people. I think of some of our brothers and sisters in closed countries, and they're tempted not to go to church. I don't want to be on a list. I don't want the secret police to be writing my name down. I could lose my job. I could lose my family, my stuff. It could be taken away. And of course, in the context of Hebrews, those exact same things were happening to the Hebrews, but the author of Hebrews says, this is not a time to take a step back from church. This is a time to lean in, because that's where your encouragement's going to come from. That's where the modeling of putting our theology into practice is going to come from. That's a great place to find the wise men and women in your lives, the local church. Ministry is the people. It is speaking God's truth in love to other people. And it's a one another dynamic to where you're ministering to them and they're ministering to you. So your question about finding people to mentor you, I'm just going to take a step back from that and just say, just engage with people. Look around. As many people as you see in the building is an opportunity for ministry. We all have spiritual needs. We all have things that the Lord has taught us. And so we get in there together and help each other to grow. Find somebody that you don't know and introduce yourself. And what you're trying to do is find out where they are spiritually. And you kind of get a picture in your mind of where they might need to go. And what's one thing you can do to help them make a step in that way? Like we read 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Different people are at different places week by week. You don't know what's going on in their lives, but you can ask them. And it's great. So you're going to find some people and go, ooh, they seem to know even less than me. Well, that's fine. Pass on what you've learned. You find some people that are kind of peers and you go, all right, you're struggling with I've got this, but we're helping each other. And then you find somebody and you go, ooh, wow, you are dropping wisdom and I need to be with you. And I really think that's where it's like, okay, I've got my coffee fund. I'm going to take that guy out to coffee, or I'm going to get with him, or I'm just going to be intentional to try to sit near them in the church gathering and make a deeper relationship so that when the opportunity comes to spend some real time, or if I'm in a time of crisis, you see, if you meet a person that's wise in 1 and 2 and 3, even if your struggle is number 4, right, different than the ones that you know they're good at, they're probably going to have some good wisdom for even number 4. Whenever we get a trial or a sudden test of some kind, it is a theology test because it clarifies so much of what you really believe. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I believe this and that and the other. But then does that go all out the window when the trial comes? Or are the truths that you have been soaking in affecting the way you think about it? And as you mentioned earlier, the way you feel about it even. Our emotions are changed because our minds are grounded in God's truth. And then that affects the decisions that we make. So our heart is fully engaged and suffering squeezes it out. I've heard biblical counselors say it's not the pressure that reveals what's inside the sponge. What's inside the sponge was already there. The pressure is what squeezes it out. Trials, they're refining. And it's so important that we know God's truth. Deprioritizing the things that God prioritizes. Sometimes it's not that we make a conscious decision to stop reading our Bibles or to stop listening to Christian music. We just kind of tune out and the weeds start to grow. Little sins come in place of the truth and the good things. And if we don't immediately go after them, the weeds will take over the garden of our hearts. And so I think that's also a great way to keep the truth in mind by not letting little compromises turn into bigger compromises, which I think of, it feels like a leak in your bucket. You know, if you got a tiny little hole, it may just seem small, but guess what? All that good truth that's supposed to be put into practice starts to leak out everywhere. So one of the things that he had recommended in your Bible reading, don't just read your chapters, but when you read the chapter, pause and kind of scan back through and find a key verse or verses and take a few minutes and think about them. And I use a journal at this point. And so what I do, so I told you today, I read Romans 9 and 10. After I read Romans 9 and 10, I pulled my journal out and then I took just a verse from Romans 9, and I wrote just a few observations, just a few sentences, not big and long, again, not mystical, not under a tree trying to clear my mind. I'm trying to fill my mind with God's truth and think about ways that it applies to me. And maybe that way, like in my case this morning, was just thinking for a few moments about the glory that is to be revealed when the Lord comes back. And he's going to be glorious, but he is going to glorify us. And how amazing is that? It's like, come Lord Jesus, this is going to be great. Well, one of the surprising effects of that exercise is you can remember more of what you read in all of chapters 9 and 10 by stopping and having that little deep dive for just a few minutes. The church is going to help us put our theology into practices. It's going to hold us accountable. Like if we don't put our theology into practice, let's just say someone's marriage became very difficult and it was difficult all the time. And even though there were no biblical grounds for divorce, they decide, I'm out, I'm leaving. Well, I'm so thankful to be surrounded by godly brothers and sisters who speak the truth in love and call me to repent and say, get back at it here and we're going to help you. We're going to show you how to do it. It's not just repeating the same sins and mistakes that you guys had been doing. Now let's have some biblical counseling in the context of this church family to basically teach you to take God's truth and to apply it in your relationship with your wife or your relationship with your kids.
To answer your first question, yes, Dr. John Crotts is actually that nice. It's kind of agitating, frankly, but he really is just that way. Why? Because his theology has moved from head to heart. It's changed him. And it will do that for you if you follow the advice that he just gave to you. If you don't want to be a dualistic Christian, please Start applying those things, and you're going to notice, okay, some changes are happening, but then here's what's going to happen. You're not even going to notice it. You're just going to become it. As you fill your mind with God and God thoughts, it's going to be transformed, and it's just going to become natural. It's not going to be a switch that you have to flip on or off. Your faith will just be engaged fully if you apply what you just heard Dr. John Crotts present. He has a podcast, too, that goes into these subjects deeper. Every single week, you will get a podcast from Dr. John Crotts called Integrated. If you're not checking it out, do yourself a favor. It will help you to integrate your knowledge to the rest of your lives, and I know you want that. If you have any more tips that you think could help all of us integrate our faith, you know what to do. Discuss. Thanks to you, the Fortis Institute launch, massive success, more resources, more people being reached, more trusted voices, and not to be greedy, but we want to reach even more people. We want to keep the momentum going, so we're launching a Truth Unhindered campaign. It's a two-pronged campaign. Number one, we're going to go on an aggressive marketing campaign to identify churches, good, bad, and otherwise, around the globe that need resources, individuals that need Bible studies and biblical resources. And then prong number two, we're going to give it all away. I mean, we already give away a lot of content, but we're going to close the store. All of our resources will now be free. We believe we can reach exponentially more people with great gospel resources, but we need your help. We have a match and give campaign. Every dollar you give, it will be matched. Would you join us for Truth Unhindered? FortisInstitute.org/donate.